That I refused to contact you. I kept my voice level. No shaking. No tears. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in the shower, in the car, in the dark before sleep. I never thought it would happen in surgical scrubs under fluorescent lights. None of it was true. Not a single word. Through the glass behind me, I could see Carla press a hand to her mouth. A resident, Dr. Kimura, second year, looked away, jaw tight. Linda sat down her clipboard and stared. Dad tried to redirect. Old instinct. This isn't the time or place, Irene. Your sister is in the ICU. I know. I just spent 3 hours and 40 minutes making sure she survives. So yes, Dad, I'm aware of where she is. He had nothing. For the first time in my life, my father, a man who had never been at a loss for a decree, had absolutely nothing. The silence was doing the work I never could. 5 years of blocked calls, returned letters, ignored emails. None of it had made a dent. But standing here alive and accomplished and wearing the proof on my chest, that was louder than anything I could have written in a letter. Mom reached for the back of a chair to steady herself. The letters, she whispered. You said you sent letters. 2 emails with my leave of absence paperwork attached. 1 handwritten letter mailed priority. You sent it back unopened. I recognized your handwriting on the envelope. She pressed her fist against her mouth. Dad stared at the floor. I called 14 times in 5 days. I asked Aunt Ruth to talk to you. You told her to stay out of it. I wasn't accusing. I was reciting. These were facts. And facts don't need volume. Then Linda appeared at the door. She didn't know the full story. Not yet. But she had hospital business. Dr. Hewlett, I'm sorry to interrupt. The board chair saw the overnight trauma log. He asked me to pass along. The Physician of the Year Selection Committee sends their congratulations on tonight's surgical outcome. Linda said it the way she'd say anything routine. She had no idea she'd just detonated a second bomb. Mom looked at me, eyes swollen, mascara gone, bathrobe still on. Physician of the Year. It's an internal recognition. It's nothing. I turned to Linda. Thank you. I need to check post-op vitals. Excuse me. I walked toward the ICU corridor, measured steps, spine straight. I didn't look back, but I heard my mother's voice behind me, small and ruined. Jerry, what have we done? And I heard something I'd never heard before. My father saying nothing. Because silence for the first time was the only honest thing he had left. 4 hours later, ICU, room 6, monitor beeping in rhythm, morning light angling through the blinds. I walked in for the standard post-op assessment. Vitals, drainage output, wound check, routine, except nothing about this was routine. Monica's eyes were open, glassy, unfocused from the anesthesia, but open. She blinked at the ceiling, blinked at the 4-pole. Then her gaze tracked sideways to me. She squinted. Read my badge. Read it again. The color drained from her face in a way I've seen before, but only in patients who've just been told their prognosis is bad. Irene. Her voice was sandpaper. Good morning, Monica. I'm your attending surgeon. You sustained a ruptured spleen and a grade 3 liver laceration from the accident. Surgery went well. You're going to make a full recovery. You're a doctor, not a question, a reckoning. I'm the chief of this department. Have been for 2 years. I watched it happen, the same spectrum Dad had gone through, but slower because Monica was processing it through a morphine drip and what I suspect was dawning terror. Confusion first, then disbelief, then fear, and then there it was. The expression I'd seen my whole life, the quick flicker behind the eyes, calculation. Even now, lying in a hospital bed with my sutures holding her liver together, Monica was trying to figure out how to spin this. Irene, listen. I can explain. You don't need to explain anything to me. I nodded toward the glass door where two figures stood in the hallway watching, faces wrecked, eyes red. You need to explain it to them. I updated her chart, checked the drain, left without another word. I didn't stay to hear what happened next, but the entire ICU floor heard it. Monica's room wasn't soundproof, and neither was the truth. Okay, I have to stop here for a second. What do you think Monica told my parents when they walked into that ICU room? Option A, she finally tells the truth. Option B, she doubles down on the lie. Option C, she plays the victim again. Drop your answer in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time because the next part of the story is where everything comes crashing down. I learned what happened from Linda, who heard it from the ICU nurse who heard it through the glass. If you guessed option C, congratulations. You know my sister. The moment my parents walked in, Monica started crying. Big heaving sobs that pulled at her stitches and made the heart monitor spike. Mom, Dad, you have to believe me. I never meant for it to go this far. I was scared for her. Dad stood at the foot of the bed. His voice was barely controlled. Monica Irene is a surgeon. She's the chief of trauma surgery at this hospital. I didn't know that. She said she sent letters, emails. She called 14 times. She asked Ruth to intervene. Mom's voice was flat, hollow. Is that true? She's exaggerating. You know how Ruth tried to tell us. Dad again, and this time his voice cracked. Not from sadness, but from the structural failure of everything he'd believed for 5 years. 2 years ago, Ruth called and said Irene was in residency, a surgeon. You told us Ruth was lying, that she was just trying to cause drama. Ruth doesn't know the whole story. What is the full story, Monica? Mom, screaming in an ICU. The nurse at the station outside flinched. 2 rooms down, a patient's visitor looked up from their phone, and Monica backed into a corner. IVs in both arms, my sutures in her abdomen, did what she always does. She pivoted from defense to offense. Fine, she's a doctor. Good for her. But she abandoned this family. She never called because we blocked her number, Monica. Dad's hand was on the bed rail, knuckles white. Because you told us to. The heart monitor beeped. The 4 dripped. And Monica, for perhaps the first time in her adult life, had no script. Aunt Ruth walked into the ICU at 9:45 that morning. I'd called her from the scrub room after surgery, not to summon her as a weapon, but because Monica was her niece, too, and Ruth deserved to know. But Ruth came prepared. 5 years of silence will do that to a woman with a filing system and a long memory. She didn't sit down, didn't hug anyone. She stood in the middle of that room and said, I've been waiting 5 years to have this conversation, and I'm not waiting 1 more minute. She pulled out her phone, opened a folder she'd labeled. I found out later. Irene proof inside screenshots of every email I'd sent my parents in those first desperate days. The PDF of my leave of absence from OSU signed by the dean stamped with the registrar's seal. My re-enrollment confirmation. A photo of my residency graduation. Me in a cap holding the diploma. Aunt Ruth next to me. The only family member in the frame. She held the phone out. Mom took it with trembling hands. And here, Ruth said, swiping to a text thread. This is from Monica, sent to me 4 years ago. She read it aloud. Don't tell Mom and Dad about Irene's residency. It'll just confuse them. They're finally at peace. The room went still. Monica stared at the ceiling. Her jaw was set, but the calculation was gone from her eyes. What replaced it was something I'd never seen there before. The look of someone who's run out of rooms to hide in. You told me to keep quiet for the family's sake, Ruth said, looking straight at Monica. But this family hasn't had peace. It's had a 5-year blackout. Ruth turned to my parents. And you too, you let this happen, not because you didn't love Irene, but because loving Monica was easier. Nobody argued. There was nothing left to argue with. Mom sank into the chair beside Monica's bed, but she wasn't looking at Monica anymore. She was scrolling through Ruth's phone, reading my emails one by one. Her lips moved as she read. She stopped on the last one, the one I'd sent the night before my residency graduation. I know what it says. I've reread it 100 times in my own sent folder. Mom, I don't know if you'll read this. I graduated from residency today. I wish you were here. I'm still your daughter. I never stopped being your daughter. Mom doubled over in the chair, not crying. It was beyond that. It was the sound of someone meeting the full weight of a mistake they can never undo. Dad stood at the window, his back to the room, his shoulders shaking. Aunt Ruth told me later it was the first time she had ever seen her older brother cry in 62 years. Not once. Not at their mother's funeral. Not when his business nearly went under. Not ever. He cried now silently facing the parking lot while the monitor beeped behind him. Monica lay in the bed. She'd stopped talking. The floor dripped. Her eyes were fixed on a point on the ceiling. There was nothing left to perform. No audience that would believe her. The persona she'd worn for 35 years was lying in pieces on the linoleum, and no amount of charm or tears or clever reframing was going to put it back together. You missed her wedding, Jerry. Ruth's voice was quiet now. Spent. Nathan's father walked her down the aisle. Do you understand what that means? Dad didn't turn from the window, but he spoke. 4 words, low cracked down the center. What have we done? Not a question. He wasn't asking. He was convicting. And knowing the truth and knowing what to do with it, those are 2 very different things. I came back that afternoon, end of my shift, 22 hours since the pager woke me. But who's counting? My parents were still there. Of course they were. Where else would they go? Back to the house where they'd spent 5 years pretending they only had one daughter. Mom stood up the second I walked in. Her face was swollen, eyes nearly shut from crying. Irene, baby, I'm so sorry. I held up my hand gently but firm. I hear you and I believe you're sorry, but sorry is a word. It's a starting place, not a finish line. What I need is time. Dad turned from the window. He looked like he'd aged 5 years since this morning. We want to make this right. Then you need to understand something. I kept my voice even. This wasn't anger. This was clarity. The kind that only comes after you've burned through every other emotion. And what's left is the truth. Clean and simple. I'm not the girl you sent away. I'm not the girl who begged you to listen for 5 days from 3,000 m away. I'm someone who built a life, a whole life without you. And if you want to be part of it now, it will be on my terms, not Monica's, not yours, mine. Dad opened his mouth. Old reflex. Then he closed it and nodded. A small devastated nod. I looked at Monica on the bed. Her eyes were open, watching me. When you're recovered, I said, you and I are going to have a conversation, a real one. But not today. Today, you're my patient. I don't mix the two. I left. Spine straight, steps measured. I didn't turn around. I'm not closing the door, but I'm the one who decides when it opens, how wide, and who walks through. 2 weeks later, Monica was discharged. Her incision was healing. The rest of her, not so much. I chose the location. A coffee shop in Middletown, halfway between her apartment and my house. Neutral ground. Nathan came, but sat at a separate table near the window, pretending to read briefs. He wasn't pretending. Monica walked in looking like someone who'd been hollowed out. She'd lost weight. Surgery plus not eating will do that, and the confidence she usually wore like cologne was gone. For the first time in my memory, my older sister looked exactly her age. She sat down, wrapped her hands around a cup she didn't drink from, stared at the table. I didn't do preamble. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to list every lie. You know what you did. What I want to know is why. Silence long enough that the barista called someone's name and it echoed off the walls. Then quiet. Because you were going to be everything I wasn't and I couldn't handle it. I let that sit. That's honest. First honest thing you've said to me in 10 years. I'm sorry, Irene. I know you are. But sorry doesn't give me back the years. Sorry doesn't put Dad at my wedding. Sorry doesn't unend that box Mom shipped back to me. My high school graduation things returned like I was dead to her. She looked away. Her eyes were wet. Real tears. I know the difference now. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. I also called your medical school twice. I tried to get them to revoke your leave of absence. I told them you'd fabricated the caregiver documents. The coffee shop hummed around us. I stared at her. Your dean wouldn't listen to me. He protected you. He didn't protect me, Monica. He believed the truth. That's not the same thing. I leaned back in my chair, took a breath. This was the part I'd mapped out the night before, sitting on the kitchen floor with Hippo's head in my lap while Nathan reviewed it with me like a closing argument. I'm not cutting you out of my life, I said. But I'm setting conditions. Monica nodded, small, defeated. You will tell the truth, the full truth, to every family member you lied to. Every aunt, every uncle, every cousin who spent 5 years thinking I was in rehab or living on the street. You will correct every single story. I will, and you'll do it in writing. An email to the family group, all 47 people. Ruth will confirm everyone receives it. Another nod. I met with my parents separately the following week. Nathan drove me. We sat at their kitchen table. The same table where Dad had read my acceptance letter all those years ago. The same table where Monica had smiled with just her mouth. I'm open to rebuilding, I said. But I need you to go to family counseling, both of you. Not for me, for yourselves. You need to understand why you believed a lie about your own daughter and never once picked up the phone to check. Dad's jaw tightened. We don't do that in this family. That's exactly why we're here, Dad. Mom put her hand on his arm gently. Jerry, please. He looked at her. Looked at me. Something behind his eyes cracked. Not open, not yet, but cracked. Fine. I stood to leave, then turned back. One more thing, Nathan's father walked me down the aisle. That happened. We can't undo it. But if you want to know your future grandchildren, you start now. Not with grand gestures, with consistency. Apologies expire. Boundaries don't. That's the difference between sentiment and structure. 1 month later, the Physician of the Year Gala. 200 people in the ballroom of the Hartford Marquis Hotel. Surgeons, department heads, hospital administrators, donors, board members, crystal glasses clinking, name tags on lanyards, a string quartet playing something classical that nobody was listening to. I wore a simple black dress. Nathan was at a front table looking like he'd been born in a suit. Maggie Thornton sat beside him, arms crossed, the faintest smile on her face, the one she reserves for moments she's been engineering for years. The MC stepped to the podium. This year's Physician of the Year, a surgeon whose clinical excellence, composure under pressure, and commitment to her patients have set a new standard for this institution. Dr. Irene Ulett, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Applause. Standing ovation from the surgical staff who'd seen me work. I walked to the stage, spotlight warm, podium solid under my hands. I kept it short. 5 years ago, I almost quit not because I couldn't do the work, but because I lost the people. I thought I needed to keep going. What I learned is that the people you need aren't always the ones you're born to. Sometimes they're the ones who choose you. I looked at Maggie, at Nathan, at my team in the third row. Then I looked at the back of the ballroom, last row. 2 seats Ruth had quietly arranged. My parents, Mom in a navy dress she'd probably bought that week. Dad in a tie he clearly hated. Both sitting with their hands in their laps, looking up at the stage with expressions I can only describe as grief and pride waging war on the same face. And sometimes, I said, the ones you're born to find their way back late, but here. Mom covered her mouth. Dad stood. Applause filled the rest. After the gala, Dad found Nathan near the coat check. He stood in front of my husband for a long moment. I owe you an apology. I should have been the one. Nathan, gracious to his core, extended his hand. With all due respect, sir, you should have been a lot of things, but we're here now. They shook hands. Dad's eyes were red. He didn't let go right away. Monica sent the email on a Wednesday night. Ruth confirmed delivery to all 47 addresses. I didn't read it until the next morning. Nathan brought me coffee and set the laptop on the kitchen table without a word. He knows when to give me space. It was 3 paragraphs. No excuses, no flowery language, just the facts laid bare. She had lied about my leaving medical school. She had fabricated evidence. She had maintained the deception for 5 years. She had deliberately prevented our parents from learning the truth. She ended with, Irene never abandoned this family. I made sure they believed she did. That is entirely on me. The responses came in waves. Uncle Pete's wife called Ruth in tears. She'd repeated Monica's rehab story at a book club 2 years ago. Cousin David in Vermont sent Monica a one-line reply. I don't know who you are anymore. Our grandmother, Nana June, 89, the matriarch who'd stopped asking about me at Thanksgiving because Monica told her it was too painful, called me directly. I'm 89 years old, she said, her voice paper-thin but furious. And I have never been lied to so thoroughly by my own blood. Irene, forgive an old woman for not seeing it. There's nothing to forgive, Nana. You were lied to. We all were. Nobody organized a boycott of Monica. Nobody sent group texts declaring her dead to them, but the trust she'd stockpiled, the currency she'd been spending for 35 years was gone. You could feel it in the silence after her email, in the replies that didn't come, in the invitations that quietly stopped arriving. No one punished Monica. They just stopped believing her. And for someone who'd built her entire identity on being believed, that was punishment enough. My parents started counseling in February. A therapist in West Hartford named Dr. Rena, calm, direct, the kind of woman who doesn't let you dodge a question. Mom took to it immediately. She'd been carrying the weight of her passivity like a stone in her coat pocket. And the first time Dr. Rena named it, enabling through silence. Mom broke down in the office and didn't stop crying for 40 minutes. That's what Ruth told me. I wasn't there. It wasn't my session to witness. Dad struggled. He sat in the chair. He answered questions in as few words as possible. Dr. Rena told him, Ruth relayed that his need to be right. His refusal to revisit a decision once it was made had been the load-bearing wall of this entire disaster. Monica provided the lie, but Dad's pride cemented it into place. He didn't argue with her. That might have been the first sign of change. 3 weeks into counseling, Mom mailed me a letter, handwritten. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I failed you, she wrote. Not just when I believed, Monica, but every time I chose peace over fairness. Every time I let your father's temper decide what was true. Every time I saw you standing in the doorway, quiet and waiting, and told myself you were fine, because it was easier than admitting I wasn't brave enough to fight for you. I read it at the kitchen table. EPO was asleep on my feet. Nathan was in the next room pretending not to listen. I didn't cry, but I held that letter for a long time. Then I opened the drawer where I keep things that matter. Sarah's card, my returned letters, the wedding invitation that came back unopened, and I placed it inside. Same drawer, different side. Progress isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just rearranging what you carry. Monica started therapy, too. Her own separate from the family sessions. I know this because Ruth told me and because Monica mentioned it briefly, awkwardly the second time we met for coffee. We've had 3 of these meetings now. Each one short, each one stiff, each one slightly more honest than the last. The first time she stared at her hands and said nothing useful. The second time she told me about the therapy. The third time she said something that actually landed. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve it, but I want you to know I'm trying not to be that person anymore. I took a sip of my coffee, sat it down, then show me. Words are cheap in this family. They always have been. Show me with time. She nodded. Didn't push. Didn't perform. That was new. Do I believe her? Honestly, I don't know. I've spent a lifetime reading Monica's performances and I'm still not sure where her acting ends and her actual self begins. Maybe she's not sure either. Maybe that's what the therapy is for. But I believe in the possibility of change. That's all I can offer right now. She carries my surgical scar on her body. 7 in left upper abdomen fading from red to white over the coming year. Every time she gets dressed, every time she catches her reflection, she'll see the mark left by the sister she tried to erase. The sister who, when it mattered most, held a scalpel with steady hands and chose the oath over the anger. I carry her damage in my memory. 5 years of silence, lodged somewhere between my ribs. We're even, in the strangest, most painful way, 2 sisters can be even. And maybe with enough time, enough real, unglamorous, consistent time, we'll find our way to something that isn't even something better, something new. I'm sitting in my office at Mercy Crest. It's late. The hallway outside is quiet. That particular stillness hospitals have after the last visitors leave and before the night shift energy kicks in. My nameplate is on the door. My diplomas are on the wall, not because I need to see them, but because the residents do. On my desk, a framed wedding photo. Nathan, Maggie, Aunt Ruth, 30 guests, a backyard in October light. No parents in the frame, but on the bookshelf next to it. A new photo taken 3 weeks ago. Mom and Dad standing on my front porch, coats on, looking slightly lost. Dad's hands are in his pockets. Mom is mid-smile, trying too hard but trying. It's awkward. It's imperfect. It's real. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, whether you're the one who was silenced or the one who did the silencing, I want to tell you something. The truth doesn't expire. It doesn't matter if it takes 5 days or 5 years. The truth has a patient way of showing up exactly when it's needed most. You can't rush it, but you can't outrun it either. I didn't get revenge on my sister. I didn't need revenge. I became someone who didn't need it. And that turned out to be the most devastating response of all. Not a scheme, not a plan, just a life lived fully on my own terms. And if you're waiting for your family to see you, really see you, stop waiting. See yourself first. Build the life you deserve with the people who show up. And when the others finally turn around, let them find a door that you control. You decide when it opens. You decide how wide. You decide who walks through. That's not revenge. That's architecture. Sunday morning, first week of February. Light snow falling outside the kitchen window. The kind that doesn't stick, but makes everything look like it's being gently forgiven. I'm making French toast. Nathan is grinding coffee beans, singing off key to something on the radio. EPO is stationed under the table, optimistic about crumbs. The doorbell rings. I wipe my hands on a towel and open the front door. Mom and Dad standing on the porch in their winter coats. Dad is holding a bottle of orange juice like he's not sure what to do with his hands. Mom has a tin of homemade cookies, her shortbread, the ones she used to make for every school event of Monica's, and none of mine. "Hi," Mom says, nervous, hopeful. "Come in," I say. "Coffee's almost ready." Dad steps inside, looks around the kitchen like he's cataloging everything. The house he's never been in, the life he almost never knew existed. He clears his throat. "Can I help with anything?" I look at him. My father, 62 years old, standing in my kitchen for the first time, asking permission to be useful. "You can set the table, Dad." He nods, goes to the cabinet I point to, takes out plates, counts them, looks at me. 4. He sets them down one by one, carefully like they might break if he's not gentle. Nathan hands him coffee. Mom hugs me at the stove. Not a dramatic movie hug, just a quiet one. Arms around me, forehead against my shoulder. No words. Holding on. Io thumps his tail. Snow falls outside. The French toast sizzles. It's not perfect. It's not the childhood I deserved or the reconciliation movies promise. But it's real. And real is more than I had for a very long time. My name is Dr. Irene Hewlett. I'm 32 years old and I am finally, slowly, carefully letting myself be someone's daughter again. 4 plates. It's a start. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own family, your own boundaries, or someone you've lost and found, leave me a comment. Tell me, what would you have done? Would you have opened that door? And if you want more stories like this, check the description for one I think you'll love just as much. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time.